It's 6 o'clock. The Board of Trustees of Colerain Township convene for the meeting at today's August 10th, 2021. So Fiscal Officer is not here.
I think we need to appoint
Mr. Jeff Mills acting, taking the place of Fiscal Officer.
I think we need a
We need a motion.
I think I would motion that we appoint a secretary for the meeting,
Okay, I second it.
but then we need to have a discussion of who we're going to appoint.
I nominate Jeff Mills.
Did you want to do it, or did you want to get Jeff to do it?
I will do whatever you guys want
Can
to
you
do. I just
can you
suggested
keep up
that-
with it?
I just suggested that in the past, having reviewed previous minutes, that, for example, when David Fogelsong was the administrator, they made David Fogelsong the acting. If you want to make Jeff Weckbach the acting, I'm okay with that too. That would take one thing off my plate, so
I think I would rather have a separate person doing it.
whatever you guys want to do.
Is that okay?
That's sure. So we have a motion to have to Mr. Jeff Weckbach as the temporary secretary for the board meeting today.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussions?
No. Jeff Weckbach, please call for a vote.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
You can,
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
aye.
Now we need to take roll call.
Mr. Weckbach?
Oh, there's people that read through this stuff. That's why we need to do it right.
All right, roll call, Mr. Unger,
Here?
Mr. Rajagopal,
Here,
Mr. Waller.
Here.
Good.
So point of procedure, do we need to do a motion excusing Mr. Baker?
I
think so.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yes.
Scott?
okay, now, the Board of Trustees Board of Trustees of Colerain Township convened today, August 10th, 2021, 6 p.m. Mr. Weckbach, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger,
Here.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Here,
Mr. Waller.
Here.
thank you. The next on the agenda is Mr. Jeff Mills. Will be going for the executive sessions.
Yes, sir. I recommend that the board move to go into executive session in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G2, to consider the sale or other disposition of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use property in accordance with Section 50510 of the Ohio Revised Code. Also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation with the township attorney. And also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G8, to consider confidential information relating to specific business strategy and to discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. The Board of-
I motion that we go into executive sessions for the reasons Mr. Mills detailed.
Go ahead. Mr.
I'll second that.
Any discussions?
Mr. Rajagopal, I would like to invite Mr. Pete Sau. I always mispronounce your last name, sir. Mr. Pete Sauerbite. Yeah.
He'll need to put that in the minutes.
Sure. What was the last name? Schwigerat. I'm sorry. Schwigerat.
No, we won't accept any. You can't buy us anything, so.
To join us in executive session.
So it's been motioned and seconded.
Okay, any
Discussion
discussions?
from me.
None. Okay, we need to take a roll call, please.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Yes?
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yep.
Very good.
The Board of Trustees will be back after the executive sessions for the meeting. Mr. Mills, anything would you like to report?
Nothing to report.
Okay, Mr. Weckbach, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger,
Here?
Mr. Rajagopal,
Here?
Mr. Waller.
Here.
Thank you. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of meditation. We all know that our children will be going back to school, so let us keep in our heart their safety and also safety for the teachers And also, we all see we've opened up a beautiful park in Colerain and safety for the children. Thank you very much. Be seated, please.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'd like to amend the agenda that was provided.
Sure, go ahead.
So under 6, make number 6C, a legislative update from Ohio State Representative Cindy Abrams.
I will second Matt's motion to amend the agenda.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Any
Thank you, Mr. President.
discussions? Okay, all done. Okay, it will be amended. The next on the agenda is fiscal office, approval of minutes.
I have no minutes for you.
There were 2 minutes that were circulated. Did you receive them?
Yeah, yes, I did.
Okay. So I believe, Mr. Weckbach, I believe there are 2 minutes from the special meeting and the regular meeting at the last.
And to those just tuning in, our fiscal officer is on sabbatical this week. So we appointed Jeff as secretary for the meeting earlier at the beginning of our other session.
Yep. So if you've received those minutes, maybe we could approve those minutes.
We have motion to approve the minutes.
From the July 27th meeting.
The special and regular meeting, yep.
I motion that we approve the minutes from the July 27th special meeting.
I second it. Any?
No discussion
Good.
from me.
Any discussion, Matt?
No.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye,
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
thank you.
Then I motion we approve the minutes from the July 27th regular meeting.
Second that.
Any discussions?
None from me.
Mr. Weckbach, roll call, please.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye,
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
thank you. The next on the agenda is the presentations. Mr. Mills?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Rajagopal, Board of Trustees, and all those here this evening. This is a special evening. We get to recognize a man who has made a difference in our community for more than a couple years. How about that? He has been a stalwart in our community for improvements. The flood pole, most recently, down at Heritage Park, was spearheaded by Mr. Larry Shad. Mr. Shad was a surveyor throughout most of his career. He spent an enormous amount of time in our community surveying property boundaries and a lot of developments that occurred here. And in his spare time, he's dedicated his time to lots of our civic organizations, including, as represented by many of the folks in teal shirts in the audience, the Historical Society. And his contributions are just, it's hard to summarize in such a short period of time, but before you this evening is a proclamation honoring Mr. Shad for all of his contributions to the community.
And I would like to go ahead and read that.
You want a motion?
We read it and then motion to approve it. Proclamation recognizing August 10th, 2021 as Lawrence E. Shad Day in Colerain Township, Hamilton County, Ohio. Be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that, whereas Lawrence E. Shad, better known as Larry, served in the United States Air Force from 1951 to 1955 during the Korean War, and whereas Larry was a civil engineer and worked as a surveyor for 40 years, performing numerous surveys in Colerain Township subdivisions, and whereas Larry has been very active in the Colerain Township community, serving as a volunteer fireman of the Dunlap Fire Department for 27 years, the Colerain Township Land Use Committee for 4 years, and the Hamilton County Rural Zoning Committee for 5 years, and whereas Larry joined the Colerain Historical Society in 1994, serving as president and holding numerous other offices. In 2017, Larry was instrumental in moving, restoring, and preserving the toll house, and in 2019, he designed and erected the flood pole monument in Heritage Park. Whereas we congratulate Larry today on his 89th birthday. We thank him. we, that's a lot, Larry. That's more than me and Raj put together. No, it isn't. Whereas we congratulate Larry today on his 89th birthday. We thank and commend him for 70 years of service to Colerain Township. Larry is truly a beacon in our community, and we are proud to honor Larry and devote this day to him. Therefore, be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize August 10th, 2021 as Lawrence E. Shad Day in Colerain Township. And I would motion that we approve such proclamation.
I second it. Any discussions?
I think I've said all I need to say about it. How about you, Matt?
Incredible. Thank you so much for your years of service.
It's marvelous that God has given you 89 years on the earth, and I'm looking for another 20 more out of you. So,
Larry, Larry, it was great opportunity for me, get to know you during this last 4 years, almost 4 years. You are an amazing guy. It is a great day for the Colerain Township. Honored such a fantastic guy. You make us proud. You make this township proud, and it's all in our blood. And thank you so much for your dedications. But I see you, even at this age, you carry the stones. You know, I remember when we were putting that bricks and stones on that, you unloaded from the truck. You know, it's amazing. He's a very strong guy. And I think this time we can sing him a happy birthday. Discussion, yeah. Let's sing a happy birthday to you.
happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Larry. Happy birthday to you.
You guys pass the.
Larry, did you have anything you wanted to say before we take a vote? Just maybe a minute or less?
This is, turn that on. This is very humbling to me. I didn't expect all this. I don't know why I'm here. I don't feel that I did anything any more special than a lot of other people in the township. But you didn't mention my tour walk in Heritage Park. I am hoping that it will draw a few more people. I had 5 family members the first time and 5 friends the second time. So maybe we will encourage a few more people to join me.
And did you have a couple family members with you? A couple of these folks your family members?
Would you introduce to us your son here?
Your son or your family that's in the audience?
My family? You want me to introduce my whole family?
Just the first 5 or 10 of them, that's all.
Well, first of all, that's my son, Matt.
Yay, Matt.
My daughter, Beth. Next to her is my granddaughter, Dannon. And there's Eric, that's Matt's partner. And Heather in the second row is my granddaughter. And her husband, John. All these names. And that's my great-granddaughter, Jessica.
Awesome.
And of course, everybody else in that area back there are members of the Historical Society or friends of mine. And I even saw Mel Garrett, who I made friends with down at Heritage Park.
Oh, great.
And he is checking on a lot of things in Colerain Township. I helped him out in finding where the railroad was that was never built through Colerain Township.
Great, thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Wickbog, roll call, please.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye?
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Very good.
I have a, would you like to take a picture with the trustees? Yeah. Come on.
Okay.
Hey, you were the Dunlop Station, Fort Colerain.
Right.
You want to see the signal?
All right, on the count of three, 1, 2, 3. Awesome.
Larry, I got some special surprise for you. Thank you very much. But you got two choices. Either you can take the award, or this is your favorite apple pie. Which one do you This is
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It's like 3 apples. I've been here for almost 10 years now, and I've never heard "Happy Birthday" sung in this room. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
All
Go
right.
ahead, Mr. Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Shad. Okay, the next item on the agenda is another presentation, and this is a very special presentation as well. At the last trustee meeting, our board asked us to do more with recognizing our township employees, and we had a recognition program set up for Employee of the Quarter, and then also we have an Employee of the Year. And so it was a perfect opportunity for us to bring our Employee of the Quarter for second quarter to the meeting. And yep, you get to stay late, Rob, and congratulations, you get to stay late at work. But Rob Shepard is our Director of IT. He is a really awesome guy for a lot of reasons. He's into cars. I don't know if you've got any car heads out there, but like Mr. Unger, I know that you like to putter with engines.
It's called Motorhead.
Motorhead, see, I don't even know. But he's very much into his Mustang, which is a very cool car, even for not a car guy. I can recognize that his car is really neat. He's always a guy that I love stopping in and saying hello to because he's always got a smile on his face. He handles all of our IT infrastructure for the entire organization, all 250 people, all of our campuses, all of our firehouses. He's the one person that is the go-to. So just doing his normal work is kind of impressive. But there was an incident that occurred in May of this year that really caused us all to stop, and thank goodness that Rob was on our team. Rob was preparing for a long weekend. He had scheduled Friday off to use vacation. When he got home, he got a phone call from our police department saying, hey, we can't get onto the internet and we can't access any of our files. So what should we do? Undeterred by the fact that it was 7 p.m. or whatever, 6 p.m., Rob tried to figure out what was going on remotely, but soon realized that this was a bigger problem than he expected. So he drove in that Thursday evening, and sure enough, it was a significant issue. Our firewall had been completely compromised. It had essentially blown up. There was a power glitch, and it fried our firewall. The firewall is the thing that keeps all the bad people out and all of our information safe. He thought that it was going to be a quick fix, but to make a long story short, he stayed in his office for about 36 hours straight, trying to make sure that all of our employees had the data that they needed to do their jobs, because computing is nearly everything these days, and everything stops when you can't have access to your data. That is just, and not once did he complain about it. Not one time did he complain about it. He, and that's who Rob is. And so we really felt like it was the right thing to do to sort of call that out as something that embodies our core values of hard work, innovation, customer service, and say thank you, Rob. As the employee of the quarter for Q2, we appreciate you, Rob, and I'd love to invite you up here and put you on the spot and make you say a couple words.
It was a very stressful 36 hours. But I love what I do, and I do it for a great bunch of people here, and that makes it even better. So it kind of took away a lot of the pain. But yeah, I was glad I was here to get you guys through it and take care of business. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Robert, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Rob.
Well, next, the citizens address.
Cindy Abrams is next.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Cindy Abrams.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this is a lot of information, but I'm going to be super quick and talk as fast as I can. First of all, congrats, Larry, and happy birthday, right? It's an exciting day. And thank you, Rob, for your dedicated service to Colerain Township. The IT person is so important, because when it's not running, our whole world is just, yeah. All right, I'm Cindy Abrams. I'm your state representative here. I serve portions of Western Hamilton County. Thank you for allowing me to speak here quickly today. All of you know my background, served with the city of Cincinnati, served on Harrison City Council, and now I'm representing you in the State House. I currently serve as the Assistant Majority Whip, and I serve on 5 committees: Criminal Justice, Families and Aging, Finance, Government Oversight, and Rules and Reference. I'm excited to highlight some pieces of legislation that I'm personally working on, and then I'm going to give you an overall update quickly. A lot of it you already know about our budget, which is very exciting that we just passed. My legislative priorities are, of course, from my background, keeping people safe, so that's reflected in a lot of the legislation that I personally support. So House Bill 92 is a common sense bill that would require public children's services to report child abuse or neglect to the military families to the appropriate military authorities. The bill passed the House unanimously and is currently in the Senate Veterans and Public Safety Committee. House Bill 93 seeks to expand the currently operating Safe at Home program. What the Safe at Home program does, it's sponsored by the Secretary of State, and victims of violent crime can keep their addresses confidential at this moment. And this will just simply expand it, because the victims of violent crime, domestic violence specifically, were not buying homes and getting settled and feeling comfortable because their home address would be compromised out there to their abuser. So again, another common sense bill that also passed the Ohio House unanimously and is currently in the Senate Local Government and Elections Committee. House Bill 109, the Ohio Law and Order Act, will create a new criminal offense that will increase the penalties for assault and vandalism when they occur during an aggravated riot. This legislation supports our men and women in law enforcement, our first responders, small businesses, and jobs in our community, and ultimately our law-abiding citizens. I will always defend freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. This bill simply says that when misconduct occurs and the law is broken, those responsible will be held accountable. The bill is currently in the House Criminal Justice Committee. House Bill 254 would create a pathway for counties and regions to establish a domestic violence fatality review board throughout the state, improving response to domestic violence and preventing domestic violence fatality. These are devastating statistics. In 2013, there were 38 domestic violence fatalities in Ohio. In 2020 alone, there were 109. Again, over the past year during the pandemic, we've seen devastating spikes in domestic violence cases. Again, the bill is currently in the House Families, Aging, and Human Services Committee. A recent survey found that distracted driving is overwhelmingly the #1 concern of Ohio drivers. House Bill 283 will expand the current language regarding texting and driving in order to make Ohio a hands-free state, meaning individuals will be prohibited from holding your cell phone while you're driving. Again, everywhere we travel, everyone here, when you get out into your car, you should absolutely expect to arrive at work or at the park or wherever you're going, visiting your family. You should expect to arrive safe and not get hit by someone who's physically looking at their phone. Again, devastating. There are provisions in this law that when your phone is mounted, you can press swipe to answer. It's a minimal touch that's in there. You can click next if you're listening to an app that plays music. Again, minimal touch. You just can't hold that phone. Again, distracted driving is a choice, meaning the crashes that result of distracted driving are preventable. I'm also excited to say that on April 12th, one of my very first bills became law. House Bill 431 enhances penalties for buyers of sex and expanding protections for young victims of human trafficking. This law takes a different approach to the problem by focusing on the demand side. Finally, we recently passed a state budget. I'm sure all of you have heard about what we were working on the last 6 months or so in Columbus. Among the highlights is a robust education reform package is called the Fair School Funding Plan, which is the result of more than 3 years of work by educators and policymakers. Basically, again, it's a predictable, sustainable, the local school districts are going to know what they're getting. The bill also includes, I'm very proud to report this, a 3% across the board personal income tax cut. The tax reform plan reduces the number of tax brackets from 5 to 4, eliminates personal income tax for anyone making less than $25,000 per year. Overall, these and other tax changes in the budget are reduced by $2 billion over the biennium. I'm also proud to highlight the investments in public safety, and a lot of this affects here our local government. And I'm just going to go through quickly, highlights a couple of them. $8.5 million in grants to nonprofit groups, churches, chartered non-public schools, and licensed preschools to improve security. $15 million, this will affect you here, $15 million for a 1-year police training pilot program to assist law enforcement agencies with training costs. So essentially, the state is going to basically reimburse you for the 24 mandatory hours that your officers here have to take each year for training. $26 million to Recovery Ohio to support anti-narcotics efforts. $24 million to schools for safety grants. $10 million for law enforcement agencies to implement body cameras. $1 million to the Attorney General's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And $4 million grants to our local law enforcement agencies for crime reduction initiatives. I send out a monthly newsletter. You can sign up for it if you go to the Ohio House website, or you can just email me at rep29@ohiohouse.gov if you'd like to receive the monthly updates. As you know, I'm here, I'm accessible, I'm here to help. The playground's beautiful, great job. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about these specific pieces of legislation, but truly I'm here just to check in and see how things are going in Colerain. And as you know, I'm here to serve you.
Thank you. I want to make a little comment. Representative Cindy Abrams, and I really admire you, your achievement, you being a fresh legislature. You already became assistant majority leader. That was a marvelous, one of the powerful job in the House. So you did a great job. And I wanted the residents to know, and Representative Cindy Abrams, instrumental getting us $500,000 grants to build the park. Without your help, the Megaland playground would not have happened. And thank you so much. And the very first year, you did this accomplishment. Thank you. And your passion for the Colerain Township is remarkable. Anyone?
It was
Thank you.
rewarding to see the
Thank you,
kids
Cindy.
smiling today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, I love the report, the citizens.
It's nice to see you, Matt. I haven't seen you in a couple of years at least.
In better times.
Yes.
Okay, the next on the agenda is, okay, I'll wait a few more minutes. The next on the agenda is citizens' address. I'll go by the list here. Bruce? Thanks.
Good afternoon, trustees and public. It's been a while, about 18 months, I guess, since I've been here. First thing I want to talk about is on the agenda. It's the RFP for branding services. This Board of Trustees and past trustees has spent too many hundreds of thousands of dollars of our resources on surveys and stuff like this that I do not feel have had very much of usefulness to the public or to the administration. You may differ with me. Particularly from a cost-benefit perspective. You see the amount of money and time spent administratively and contractually, I don't think we're getting a bang for the buck. There's no indication in this package of what the township plans to spend on this RFP. So is it $50,000, $100,000, you know, what? You know, what are we looking for? A lot of folks I've heard at Colerain Township meetings and elsewhere want us to be more like Westchester. I know some of you up there and the trustees have had that feeling, or at least have expressed something along those lines. We will never be a Westchester. We are what we are, and some advertising branding will not change this fact. Residents and those who visit or drive through Colerain will continue, no matter what you do, to trash our township. I mean, what logo brand do you want for that? And I know you've been going after trash and so forth, but the reality is we're drive-through trash, and even the rural parts, car parts, tires, rubber laid all on the roads all over the place by the drivers that are racing. we are what we are. We're hardworking, working class people by and large. Our demographics will never be a Westchester. Personally, I like it that way. I like particularly the west side where we don't cause problems, which Mark reminded me of, which is good. But I don't know that we need a brand. We are what we are. And I know people get upset about that bridge sign. By the time you see that bridge sign, you're already past the place. So if you want to do something, you need to have it a half a mile or more before you get to the exit. Along the lines of expenses, in previous meetings, and I have been watching the township meetings when it works on Waycross, that an implication of a police levy, just like the levy for fire last year. As I've stated publicly before, I am totally against these levies. I am totally for police and fire. But it really irks me that we take something as important as safety and put it out separately so you can fund other things that people want or just a few people like. Our police and fire do a great job. And in Arise, you often say how, we're the greatest in the state. Well, it reminds me of something back in my federal career when I was trying to do something perfect. And my supervisors told me, don't let the good get in the way of the perfect. And sometimes doing something within your means is what you should do. Since I was on the Financial Advisory Committee, I have some sense, and I have through my career, on balancing needs and wants. And I believe putting these levies on as individual, here, vote for this, because we need it and you want it. And then funding other things, which some people want. Some people may say that may be nice. I think is a unbalanced needs assessment. A great example is what you just came from this afternoon, that Fort Colerain. Wife and I went and looked at it. We were very underwhelmed of the spending of those hundreds of thousands of dollars for what we got. That is not a good balance of needs, wants, and just want to make it public. And you need to look at, even though I know during the pandemic, a lot of people use your parks. But how many people use those parks out of the totality of the number of citizens? That's an important aspect because we're all paying for it. Thank you and have a good night.
Mr. President, I have an update on the audio, which we were having some problems. So the master control is now getting good audio. There's crackling on Spectrum 4 in the online feed, and now the problem's fixed on Spectrum 4. So
Good, thank you.
I don't know what any of that means, but I'm sure if you're watching it, you do. So
What I forgot to mention early in the meeting, when the citizens address, I usually humbly ask you to talk for 5 minutes. They give opportunity to have a good, meaningful meetings. And also what we do during this time, the 5 minutes, go and talk, and trustees and also our administrator will take the notes, and the administrative report comes. We respond to the concerns that you address during the meeting. So then again, I will humbly ask you to keep that time limits 5 minutes, please. Thank you. The next in the agenda I got the list I got Mr. Keith Miller.
Hello, Keith.
Good evening, trustees, neighbors. Well, after the last meeting, I was sitting with Roses, waiting for a carryout, and a neighbor who lives in Colerain Township, Northwest School District, tells me after you all passed that $8.4 million school levy, I believe that's what it was, that they're cutting programs on your school now after you pass that. That's just what I was heard sitting, from a fellow taxpayer, Northwest School District, where I'm Mount Healthy School District. So I just wanted to touch on that for a second, so all you that voted for that knows. And the other thing I want to talk about's the Chopin and them wanting to try to open up that. I mentioned this before. They're wanting to try to open Chopin up in that autism camp. I know that's what they're wanting to do because they don't want to build a bridge. They bought that Compton Road property to build an autism camp, and I already know more about it. The people that bought that property is Indian Hill people. They're shipping their kids out to, actually it's Springfield Township the property sits in, but Chopin dead ends into that property. There's a guardrail there right now that the neighbors wanted up years ago. When I was a kid, there was no guardrail. You ride your bike straight down the sidewalk, right into the woods, and straight down to the creek. But they changed that for some reason. But we don't want a bridge opening up into this autism camp. I mean, we don't want this road opening up into this autism camp because we don't know what really is there. Because, we already know the rich people don't have the same laws as we do. So if they break a law, they don't get a record. I was raised by the greatest generation. They said stuff like, the wealthy gets one murder. We seen that. The wealthy, they control this government. We see that. So I just want to make sure you're all aware. These people bought that property down there for that autism camp, knowing it needed a bridge. And I do want to make a mention of that bridge because that car can come over that bridge. That car went in over that bridge, Dan, okay? There's 3 more of them bridges still in use.
No, there's one back in the woods right now that looks like it's 80 years old.
Yeah. Well, there's one, Keller's Lake's got that same bridge. I don't know if you know what Keller's Lake is. I know you do, Dan. And then that next property, and then the property next to Hanks, all 3 of them's got that same bridge that's down there at the autism camp. So that car went in across that bridge. That car can come out across that bridge. And the way I was told by the neighbors I talked to, that's about the 11th car to be down there. Now, I don't want to see Colerain Township recouping that car because the car's in Springfield Township. And Colerain Township should not be recouping that car. So I just wanted to make sure that was known and make sure that this Indian Hills, they want the car out of there, they should pay for it. And they should put a bridge in. I don't want to see Chopin opened up into that. That's the main concern of mine. I mean, I don't want my grandbabies walking down into that. I think they're calling it a camp. And my grandson's done talked to the owner because he's down in that woods. And he said something about they're wanting to build like 7 individuals, units or whatever they're going to call them. So, I don't know if that's because there are going to be 7 different families, children living there, or how it's actually going to work. I don't know no plans. I just know my grandbaby talked to the owner, which is an Indian Hill guy. And I will find out who it is because I have connections at the autism, MRDD as they call it still. But I'm going to let it go at that. I'm just concerned I don't want to see Chopin open up into an autism camp that has a Compton Road address. Compton Road address should have a Compton Road drive, not a dead end out of Chopin. And I believe you all agree with me there. So I thank you then. Good night.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
The next on the list I have is Rich McVeigh.
Evening, Mr. McVeigh.
Hey, good evening, Board. Thanks for listening to me. I stand here this evening in support and offering encouragement for this branding effort that you're about to launch. I think it will help to pull the community together. I think it will help us to get clear on our objectives that we have, and it will provide clarity and focus for strategy and decisions that we need to make, so I support that. I had some things that I asked you to consider, and maybe don't move quite as fast. Forbes research reveals that over 80% of the city branding efforts are not successful. And there's some reasons for that. And I've read the cover letter that the administration put together, and I'll talk about it, and the RFQ. So they're attempting to get clear about this. But the primary problem that people have is confusing branding and marketing, and the brand identity versus brand image. You know, I think in the last meeting, Matt talked about the fact that we got yellow letters on the sign over by the mall, and we got the issues on the bridge, and we got font on the township. All this stuff is different. And that's more of a marketing issue. That's not a branding issue. It's very important to be able to identify the difference between what your brand identity, that's what you really stand for, and what your brand image is, okay? And most of the work, the really heavy work that you're gonna ask this agency to do is to help you identify what your brand identity is. And you need to do they need to do the amount of research, understanding the history of the place. I mean, we just had Larry Shad here in the family talking about some things. You know, that's the history of Colerain, and understanding our history and involving the stakeholders in the discussion is extremely important. It's one of the reasons why, if you haven't done that, if a city hasn't done that, that they've haven't had success. The other important thing is to be unique and differentiating. That's important. You know, I come from Procter & Gamble. We spend a lot of time differentiating our brands, and brands are different than cities and townships, but the common thing is that you need to, if you're trying to set yourself apart, you need to be able to identify how you're setting yourself apart. And if I go to the letter that the administration put together, they define Colerain Township as a thriving community that cares, creating a brand that captures the essence of Colerain as a distinctive, authentic, and we'll come back to that word authentic, and a memorable place to raise a family, cultivate a business, and have a good time. That's what's going to attract people. But I would say that, you know, Anderson Township might say the same thing, and Westchester may say the same thing around those kind of things. So those generalities, you have to move beyond in order to really figure out what it is that Colerain stands for. The other important thing is that beyond differentiation is that it needs to be viewed as authentic. And they use the word authentic in here, and that means that it needs to be authentic to the people that live here, as well as the people that you're trying to attract, okay? So in order to get that sense, you need to spend enough time with the stakeholders who live and work here to get that perception, okay? So then you have to step back and say, what is our objective? Are we trying to recruit more people, more businesses? Are we trying to increase the sense of community? You know, so that's the stuff that you need to really come to grips with. And when you choose an agency to work with, you ought to be looking at the people that come with you with those kinds of questions, rather than things that are dealing with logos and colors. And that's in the prep, but that's all secondary, because once you're clear on what the identity is in the township, you can get marketing people to put together, you know, stuff that makes sense around logos and colors and all that kind of stuff. That's important, you know, but you can get logos and colors posted, but they don't deal with your identity, and that's one of the reasons that some things fail, okay? So the brand identity needs not only to attract investors, but it needs to attract the residents that live here, okay? So I support this for the reasons I said. I would just urge you to think about this in a timely sense. Don't rush into it, okay? Spend the amount of time that we need to in sorting through the people who respond to the RFQ. And with a focus on what kind of questions are they asking us that's really forcing us to get into our identity, okay? And I'd also say you might reach outside the region. I don't know how far you're gonna go or how you're gonna advertise this, but there are some, if you do some research, there are some people who have done good work with some cities around this kind of stuff. And they speak to the kinds of failures that I've mentioned here, and Forbes talks about 80% of them failing. That's not the group we want to be in. No, we want to be in the group that produces something that's going to stand the test of time. So I say take the time, and to be clear, and Mr. President, I have an example of a branding proposal. A little more detail, and I'm not saying acceptable, but this proposal gives you some more specific insight into the kind of leads to give the teams that are going to bid on the project. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Next is Ms. Kathy Moore, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
A couple of months ago, or meetings ago, I had brought up about that was something that was in a recent audit about donations and gifts. And I was wondering if the board has given any thought to drafting a policy regarding donations and gifts that were outlined in that audit. And they were a $4,000 contribution to the summer events, a pocket watch for a former trustee, and in previous years, a former administrator had bought $750 in Potbelly gift certificates to hand out, and Dick's Sporting Goods gift certificates to hand out to employees. So, having this behind us, and now that the recent audit suggests that, well, their recommendation was that the township develop a policy concerning donations and gifts. And I wondered if the board had thought anything about that. And then also I wanted to comment on the cleanup. I guess last meeting, Mr. Mills stated that for $10,000, we were hiring a firm to clean up. And in this letter that he has, it's not, it's very vague, and it says that the cost is $1,345 per cycle picked up. And I heard him say that it was once every 3 weeks, I believe. And then they'll charge $335 to haul the trash away. And I guess several questions are, is this only on Colerain Avenue? Is it from what point on Colerain Avenue to what point on Colerain Avenue? When they do this, they pick a day to do this. Is it for 2 hours or 4 hours? Or what are some of the details in this agreement? And they are only going to be picking up along the roadway, so that means that our appliances and furniture are still going to be left where they were. So I wondered if the board, had any ideas from this letter. Do you know how many hours this company is going to do this? And $335 to haul litter away seems like an awful lot to me. I had a whole Rumpke truck full of yard debris once, and it was only $175. So $335 to haul away litter for 1 day's work, which we don't know how long it is, and if it includes any other streets besides Colerain Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, I have Dick Semple.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I had the privilege of standing with you today at a wonderful place called Fort Colerain. Historically, that park had fallen apart in disarray with old lumber and the community got together and decided that it was time to redo the whole thing. And my compliments to each and every one of you tonight, including Jackie. I don't think Jackie's here tonight. Jackie O'Connell was instrumental in getting the steering committee, in which I was involved in, putting our ideas together in a positive way, because Colerain is, despite the past three speakers, has a lot going for it. And I think we need to expand on the positives of Colerain Township and not get involved with the small stuff. Today we saw history in the making with a new park, sitting on historic land of schools that are over 100 years old. I'm sorry that the Historic Society group is gone, because I wanted to compliment them for staying in the historical part of our community and getting the facts straight. I know our leader over here in the Historical Society, I've talked to her several times about portraying Colerain historically so people understand who we are. And I don't think that's done in many communities. Some places they do. Downtown Cincinnati is very good at historic embellishments, you know, with the museums. But unfortunately, Colerain has not had that type of opportunity, and I challenge those in this room and throughout the community to pull together the resources in a good way that we can go forward and make Colerain as good as Westchester, as good as Green Township. I'm not gonna sit in the back seat and let this community decline. It's all good if you just look in the right place. And finally, in this Richmond Bay talked about branding. As a designer, I've been involved in branding with architects and corporations like Procter & Gamble and Kroger. And we all determined that you need to know what you are and who you are. And I think in this branding resolution, whoever's going to get involved with that will address those items, and then we'll have a direction. We need to move forward in a positive way, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next is Ms. Stephanie Wright, please.
Evening.
Hello.
Hi.
Long time no see. I'd like to talk about a couple of things on the agenda and a couple of things from past agendas. I see that tonight we are entering into another outsourcing of something to be done for our township on litter pickup. I do agree that the township is plagued with litter and illegal dumping. This has been a passion of mine for years, as long as with vacant property that is going nowhere. So I'm glad to see that you are looking out and trying to figure out something to do for the litter issue that is definitely huge in Colerain. Although I don't think this email is anywhere near a contract. I've never been in the professional field. I don't deal in contracts, but usually they have a start time, an end time, what will be accomplished, and usually a couple people sign it. This is an email with just a scribble on the bottom of it. I understand that our administrator has the authority to sign something up to a cost of $10,000 at his discretion, but I think it's doing a disservice to the Board of Trustees because they don't know what's all involved. So when a resident maybe calls you or sees you on the street and asks you, well, what's that all about? You don't have the knowledge to answer those questions, and I think that's a really bad message to residents. We have a history of implementing procedures in this township, but there is zero follow-through. One of them would be the Ampm Contract that the township readily entered into for the police department's false alarms. That was over 2 years ago. Nothing has ever come to fruition on that. Nothing. Never been mentioned. Last I heard about it, there was some type of glitch with our system communicating with their system. Never brought up again. Another just thing that fell by the wayside. Also, the MuniReg. That is a company that the township entered into another agreement contract with to look into vacant building maintenance license agreements in the township, being commercial or residential. That's been on our books for 8 years, never been enforced. I asked for the invoices from MuniReg. They've yet to submit one. Where have they been? What are they doing? Yet vacant property continues, commercial property becomes dumping sites. The cycle just continues and continues. I see zero follow through. I'd like to see a little less talking and a little more action. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next on the list is Mr. Donald Wright.
Good evening.
Hi. Well, I'm a long-time watcher and this first-time talker. So what's on my mind is this litter removal thing. I watched the meeting last on the 27th and I was going crazy. Like Kathy said, I think it's very high. What is it, 1,345 per cycle, 335 to haul away. So that's 1,680. And that's only 5 times. Litter's got to be picked up more than 5 times on Colerain Avenue in a 3-week process. Litter needs to be picked up every day on Colerain, around Colerain. There's just litter everywhere. And like I said, they can do 6 times, but that's $10,080, so that's over the 10,000 mark. So, and I have the questions too. What part of Colerain? Why just Colerain? Why are we focused on Colerain Avenue? Yes, I know it's the heart of Colerain and stuff, but that's a county road. Why do we need to take care of a county road where we need to take care of all the other residential roads in Colerain Township? And like you said, how many men, how many hours, what part of Colerain to what part of Colerain? Is it to the sidewalk? Is it to the business? Is it in the middle of the street? Bus stops. There's no more benches. You see grocery carts flipped over so they can sit on them. Are they going to pick them up and throw them in the truck? Bodies, tires, car parts, anything. What goes in there? It just says trash. Then I look at this labor pickup. Do we have a part-time labor pickup now? And I see here $15 an hour. Well, if you pay him $15 an hour, 20 hours, that's $300 a week. He can pick up trash for 33 weeks for under $10,000. $15 an hour, I think that's a ridiculous pay. I think you should pay him $20, $25 an hour. That's a dangerous job. And that's how I feel about it. And just like say, if you pay him $20 an hour, that's 25 weeks instead of 5 weeks, and it's every 3 weeks they pick it up. This, you have someone pick it up every day, 20 hours a week. So, I mean, I even do it. If you pay decent, you need to pay your laborers more money. There's a lot of overpaid people in this township, and I believe the police, fire, and the general public workers are way underpaid. You need to pay them more money too. So that's all I really had. I really just have a beef on this pickup litter. It needs to be done every day, not every 3 weeks. We don't need to look at trash for 20 days before it's picked up again. So those are my comments, and I just want to let you know how I felt about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the comments the citizens address will be answered during the administrative trustee reports. Thank you. The next on the agenda is administrative reports.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rajagopal. I'll kick this off this evening, answering some of these questions. Let's see, Mr. Pirano asked how much we plan to spend on the branding initiative. Currently, in our budget, we have allocated $75,000. We hope that that comes in much less, but as Mr. McVeigh can share with you, we're not just looking for a logo here. It's a brand identity, and I really appreciate you making that distinction, Mr. McVeigh, because that is exactly right. It's not just a mark. We're talking about digging into our community and finding out, distilling out the essence of it, and creating a brand identity that we can share and all be proud of. So hopefully that answers that question. I didn't hear any questions in Mr. Miller's comments and Mr. McVeigh's comments. I didn't hear any questions. I appreciate you sharing that with us.
I think Mr. Miller asked questions about that Springfield Township, pulling the car out.
I can comment on that
Okay.
when it's my turn.
I don't know anything because that's in Springfield Township, so I don't know. Kathy, Ms. Moore had asked about a donations and gifts policy, and I don't believe that we have a donations and gifts policy. We have a donation acceptance policy, but we don't have a donation making policy right now. So questions about the litter pickup contract, and let me start with sort of the big picture here. So each year, our Board of Trustees identifies a big theme for our work product, right? So this year, for our strategic plan and budget, the big theme is clean, green, and prosperous. And the whole idea with the strategic plan and budget is to figure out what the priorities of the board are, create goals to achieve that big theme, and then initiatives that achieve the goals, right? And then we take our financial resources and we try to match them, take the money that we have and the people that we have and align that with the work that our board wants us to accomplish. And so clean, green, and prosperous, that's also the first three goals of our strategic plan this year. One of them is a focus on litter and dumping. We want to get rid of litter and dumping. I think we all agree that is a terrible thing. And so we have these initiatives to achieve the goal of less litter and dumping. And we've hired an environmental crimes investigator, a police officer that only, his job, as we'll see tonight, some of the numbers that he's putting up. He interacts with, illegal dumping, lots of quality of life issues, and tires, that kind of thing. Those are the types of things that he investigates. We also, as part of that goal, one of the initiatives was to hire litter pickup folks. And so our board has added to our budget and our organizational chart 2 part-time litter pickup people at the rate, as Mr. Wright said, of $15 an hour. Those are posted right now. And we have, since we've had those in our organizational chart, we've only had one person that's willing to do it. And he was there for several months in a part-time capacity, and he has quit. It's a difficult job to hire a person to pick up litter. So I would encourage everybody that I speak to, those in the audience tonight, please help us find folks that will help us to pick up litter in our community. That's a very important job. Because litter is such a high priority to us, we didn't accept the fact that just because we couldn't find somebody to pick up litter, that we were just going to throw our hands up in the air and say, oh, well, we tried. So that's the reason for the contract. So we tried to figure out, would anybody be able to come pick up litter on our highest priority area, which is the Colerain Avenue corridor. 40,000 people per day drive down that road, and it really is a part of our image as a township. So Merkel, this is sort of supposed to be a stopgap effort, so that we're doing something about litter in the interim while we try to find people that are willing to pick up trash. They're willing to do it from the bottom of Colerain to the top of Colerain for a price of, as you mentioned, $16,000. And the reason that it's capped at $10,000 is because that's the maximum authority that I have to spend, right? So the idea is either, and it's every 3 weeks, as Mr. Wright mentioned. So the idea is that after 5 times 3, 15 weeks, we either bring a contract back to the board to continue it if we like what they are doing, or hopefully we've filled those positions and we have 2 part-time people. That's 40 hours a week of litter pickup service. So that, I hope that that helps to share with you like the why behind the Merkle contract, and hopefully going forward, we're able to fill those positions and deploy those resources out into the community. As to where, so it's only going to be in the right of way. You know, we talk about this frequently in this room. You know, the government does not have the ability to just go onto people's property and take their stuff, whether it's trash or it's their car, right? And that's, in my mind, that's probably a good thing, that the government can't just come and take your stuff. If it's a nuisance that we're trying to abate, an accumulation of trash, we have to go through this big, long process that's set out in Ohio Revised Code, because people have property rights, and we have to respect those property rights. So every meeting, we've got a resolution, as folks who follow this will know, that where there's a nuisance abatement resolution, where the Board of Trustees declares that there's a public nuisance at XYZ address and directs the township to abate that nuisance and charge that fee to the cost of the abatement to the property owner. So we can't just go onto people's property. So for that reason, the Merkle group and our part-time folks will have to stay within the right-of-way, which means, you know, between the power poles is a good rule of thumb of where you can expect the litter pickup to occur. Let's see, Ms. Wright talked about the Ampm contract. So the Ampm contract, you're exactly right. When we got into the implementation phase of that contract, the 2 systems don't talk to each other. And so instead of spending a bunch of money to hire a developer to build what they call an API to connect the 2 systems, we said we're not going to go forward with that at that point. So you're right, we are not doing anything with Ampm anymore. You asked the question about MuniReg and why there have been no invoices. There's no invoices because in this contract, there's no money going to MuniReg. We are not paying MuniReg anything. In fact, MuniReg is giving us money. So it wouldn't be an invoice that you're looking for, it would be a receipt. So there has not been and there will not be any invoices, I don't believe, with MuniReg. You had mentioned that the vacant building maintenance license has never been enforced. If you go to our website, you'll see all of the properties that are in the vacant building maintenance license, and I think there have been a couple of public records requests where we provided you with all of the vacant building maintenance licenses. We've had hundreds of properties that have gone through that program, so it is being enforced. And then I think that's all of the questions. So on to my administrative report. Today has been such a special day. It's not every day where there is so much positivity in Colerain Township. I mean, when we cut the ribbon at Fort Colerain Playground, the number of smiling faces was just incredible. I mean, it just felt so good. And I remember mentioning to Trustee Wallert, you know, this is what it's all about. You know, you work for years and years, literally, on this project, and it was not easy, right? There was a lot of conversation in this community about, you know, remember when it was going to be a ninja playground, right? And then that we didn't move forward with that, and then we had these 3 designs, you know, remember it was like the superhero world, and then the crater, you know, asteroid world, and that the community said no, we don't want that. And finally we got to this place where we could all gather and rally around the historical significance of Fort Dunlop, and let's, you know, it's just incredible to see that evolution, that engagement, that involvement with this board that really truly cares about what the community wants, and then to see it actually with kids playing on it, it was really wonderful today. And then, of course, Mr. Shad, that is just so cool. He has just committed so much to this community. So I am feeling wonderful about the things that we've been doing and the direction that we're going, and it's events like those that just really make it special. That will be the end of my administrative report, and I'd like to see if Mr. Chief Walls, would you like to give the fire report?
First,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mills, I had some quick questions about the branding. I'll just wait until, I guess.
Okay.
Where's my other question? In this mess, I can't find the other question. I'm sure it'll come around by my report. Sorry, Chief, didn't mean to co-opt you.
You're fine.
Chief. Sorry.
Good evening to the board,
Good evening.
those of you in attendance, and those of you watching virtually. July activity for the Department of Fire and EMS. We had 791 EMS incidents, 176 fire incidents. We had 31 responses into the Springfield Township EMS contract area. As far as our significant incidents, we had a building fire in the 3400 block of February Drive with a $50,000 loss. We had a building fire in the 3100 block of Regal Lane with a $40,000 loss, and another in the 8200 block of Colerain Avenue. That was a $20,000 loss, and I want to come back to that in just a minute. Likewise, we were involved in a swiftwater rescue on July the 24th, which I want to address quickly as well. Our property value lost was $111,200. Our property value saved was $2.7 million. Our average response time for the arrival of the first unit was 5 minutes and 18 seconds. And our first unit on the scene, less than 6 minutes, was 71.45%. Quickly, just to address the building fire in the 8200 block of Colerain Avenue. A couple things to consider here. Rapid response and working suppression system. So the Red Squirrel, being a family-run anchor in the Groesbeck area, attached to that strip mall at 5 p.m. on a Friday, enhances the need for a working suppression system, which it had, as well as a hood system, which it had, as well as a rapid response by us. And we could what if the hood system didn't work, what if the suppression system work, but in essence, had that been able to spread vertically and then horizontally, we run the risk of losing several occupancies. What it points to is a collaboration of departments, both police and fire, and our incident priorities of life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. And just to give an idea of the time frame, so from the time the call was received at the communications center until we arrived was 5 minutes, 11 seconds. From the time we received the call from the communications center to arrival was 3 minutes and 55 seconds. And from turnout time to arrival was 3 minutes and 28 seconds. The 27-second reaction time, that's the time that they have to, when we receive the call, to don their gear, get on the truck, and get moving down the road. And so, once again, it highlights, that rapid response, working suppression system, and coordination and collaboration amongst departments. As far as the swiftwater rescue, I want to read something here from the captain of the City of Cincinnati Heavy Rescue 14, a email that he sent to his chief about this rescue. The crew of Colerain Township Boat 26 saw how perilous of a situation the victim was in and decided to exit the boat in an attempt to rescue the victim. So a go rescue is the last order of business for us, to get out of that boat and get into swift water. 2 members of CTFT Boat 26 entered the water in an extremely fast current and swam to the victim in the strainer. And in this case, the strainer was a tree that had fallen into the river. One member of Boat 26 literally held the victim's head above water, while the other climbed up in the tree in fast-moving water and attempted to get a life ring on the victim. At this point, we arrived in Zodiac Boat 14 and were able to assist. We assisted the crew of Boat 26 to get a PFD on the victim, or a personal flotation device. Boat 26 crew were able to free the victim from the strainer, and we were able to get him into Zodiac Boat 14 and take him to the shore. Boat 26 was able to retrieve his 2 rescuers from out of the tree. I submit this brief account of the rescue to highlight the extremely heroic actions of the crew of Colerain Township Boat 26. They exposed themselves to extreme personal risk to make this rescue. I have no doubt that if they had not acted as swiftly and decisively, that this victim would have drowned. And so this sums up our risk management statement of risk a lot to save a lot. At great risk to their own lives, they exited that boat into swift-moving water to rescue this victim. It's a culmination of training, years of support and collaboration, and a recognition of the direness of the situation. The crew of Boat 26's skill and bravery reflect great credit upon themselves and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the fire service. And for me, it's humbling and a source of pride to work alongside the caliber of individuals that we have here at Colerain Fire and EMS. And then lastly, just to give an update on some contamination in the Great Miami River. So the City of Fairfield wastewater treatment system uses an ultraviolet system to kill bacteria, which is discharged into the Great Miami River. It's a one-step and a multi-step process. And so normally the UV system kills any remaining bacteria in the treated wastewater. However, a control board failed in that UV system, causing it to stop operating. They hope to have it repaired sometime later this week. And so what they're saying is from Joyce Park to US 27, there's a risk of contamination from E. coli and fecal coliform. But you can't necessarily say it's going to cease to exist at US 27. In that northeast part of the township, there's the possibility of contamination. Now, obviously, as it goes further downriver, it becomes more and more diluted. But at the present time, they expect that that will be fixed sometime within the week. And as we know more about that, then we can update the residents. We did put something out on our Facebook page yesterday to address that. And that information was obtained from a Cincinnati Enquirer article which quoted Adam Sackenheim, the Public Utilities Director at Fairfield and the Ohio EPA.
Thank you, Chief, for that. I had called, or I texted Mr. Mills at 7:45 this morning, and I'm like, I know it's not very much notice, but can you have Chief talk about this leak or this water quality issue? It isn't just for people as well. From what I understand, it's a threat to pets and animals.
Correct. Yep.
So if somebody were to go in near, and again, there's no wall that blocks the water. If somebody were to go into the water, or a pet to go into the water, it's best to just wash them down, or is it?
Decontaminate them best you can. If they felt sick at a later date, obviously contact their physician. But, you know, like I said, it doesn't just ceremoniously end at US 27. It could be, and it's probably conservative on their behalf to say Joyce Park to US 27. Yeah. But, and speaking with somebody that I know, they didn't necessarily do any modeling in respect to where that contamination would go, so that was kind of their best guess.
And I thank you for bringing that, because I think that's important that our residents know that. I don't know that many residents are going to go swimming in it after hearing that, but more likely a pet or something would end up there.
That is an area right up there that's heavily fished, though, in quite honesty.
Okay.
Between the bridge and basically Heritage Park.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Go ahead. Chief, I just want to thank our fire department and also our police department and also our public works department, how they work together, and they put the fire out on the Red Squirrel. I saw that, and our fire guys risked their life. It's a very dangerous situation, but they work hard, put the fire out, save the people up there, and I'm really proud of them. And you know, this, like I said in the leadership meeting, and this time all our department coming together, work together, that's a great thing for our township.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'd like to invite Chief Mark Denny from the Police Department.
Evening, Chief.
I should get to go first. Those are hard shoes to fill. I hope the residents realize the quality of that fire department. We are incredibly lucky, so that's impressive. For the month of July, our officers responded to 3,913 calls for service. That puts us at about 25,000 for the year, which is a 5% increase over last year. And we're on pace to answer about 43,000 calls for service. What is interesting is about half of those calls come through our 321 cops number, we found out. So they're doing a tremendous amount of money, or a tremendous amount of work that's saving us a tremendous amount of money by having that service there. Response time is about 2 minutes, 38 seconds to emergency calls. We made 130 traffic stops, 6 DUI arrests. We had 4 uses of force, 3 pursuits, and 129 physical arrests. Jumping to the Code Enforcement and Environmental Crimes Unit, in just the last 20 days since they were in front of you to give you an update, they've handled 46 abandoned vehicles. They stickered 25 and impounded 25 and stickered 46. Handled 27 overtime parking complaints, 9 illegal dumping and littering complaints, conducted 230 inspections, handled 139 new entries, conducted enforcement on 122 violations, and closed 100 violations in 20 days. That's a lot of work. The first quarter, this is the 3rd month we've been doing this. In total, they've done 930 inspections, 376 violations were closed, impounded 50 cars, and conducted 64 resident meetings, and handled 513 violations in just those first 3 months. So they're taking your direction, your message, and moving forward on it. I'm very proud of the work they're doing. Thank you.
Chief, I just had a couple questions and follow-ups for some previous discussions. This was my question I meant to ask Mr. Mills. There's an abandoned car behind Taylor now in the woods. I think we talked about that at the leadership meeting. I don't know if I think that's a little bit more reachable to get that out. And
Yeah, the school district's aware. We're working with them. It is on
Okay.
their property. We are working with them to, I'm sorry? It is on their property.
Oh, that should be easy.
We're working with them on getting them to take care of that.
And I know that, and this is just for people out there that this had come up in one of our work sessions about safety. You and I had talked afterwards about kind of an in-service for school district bus drivers there so that they can report people that evidently are driving around the bus. So we have that in the works.
Ohio has a subsection in their law that allows school bus drivers, upon an affidavit, because normally an officer has to witness a traffic violation to write a citation. School bus drivers can file an affidavit with a license plate of the vehicle that conducted or went around their stop bar, and we can issue a citation on that. So we're going to do an in-service with the school district to make sure their drivers are aware of that, and then our traffic officers will follow up by issuing citations to whoever decides to do that.
I appreciate that, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but what's the penalty so the bus is stopped and I decide that I can't wait and I'm going to drive around it?
It's a mandatory court appearance, so it's up to the judge. So
Okay.
it's not even a payout citation. So
Good.
It requires you to take time off of work or wherever else you were in a hurry to get to when you pass that bus and sit down in court and answer to a judge as to why you decided that was important.
Okay, I appreciate that. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up, and I don't know, I think that probably people need a refresher course on this, and I don't know if this is something we can put together for next meeting or whatever. Just what are the rules of the road when the bus was there? I mean, I see all the time 6-lane highways and 5 of them stopped, which you don't have to do, and then then you have people running around it. And
It seems unreasonably complicated for some reason. I'm not sure why they make it where you need to sit and think about it, but
Right.
I'll put something together that maybe
Okay, I appreciate that.
simplifies a little bit.
I think that one of the things I got from that safety meeting is that we went in concerned about speed through the neighborhoods, and that's still a concern, but trumping all that were the concerns of safety of school children.
Absolutely.
And that's like a whole nother level and ballpark for me, and I appreciate your hard work on that. And
It's usually the same people that are speeding.
probably, yeah. We'll get them one way or the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for the great work. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. And I don't believe that there's a public services report this evening. And so I will just end our administrative reports with the knowledge, share that with you guys that all of our financial reports for the month of July are published on our website, and we are moving forward into August.
The next on the agenda items is Trustees Report.
All right, I can go first if you want. The first thing I want to do, and I'd spoken to Mr. Mills about this, is I'm going to make a motion during the trustee report. I want to motion that the township take a look at the most used bus stops and buy 3 or 4 benches for folks to sit, with the idea that, look, when we went to court against the advertising benches, and we didn't want them there because they were eyesores. And we won that lawsuit, and we won a cash settlement that we're waiting on and holding our breath. But that we would use that cash settlement then to replace the benches with something that we could then control. One of the unintended consequences of that, and I think that you may have heard Mr. Wright speak about that, is that people are flipping over carts. I'm watching people that have no reason to be standing out in 90-degree weather. That are elderly, that have maybe kind of health issues. And that's one of those things where it looks good on paper when you get rid of the advertising benches, and I'm glad we did it, because I think it really kind of trashed up the township. But I think that we have an obligation to provide something for people to sit at those buses while we're going through the process of replacing it, using SORTA and Metro, using the funds from the lawsuit. So I want to motion that the administration would take a look at those spots, see what are most used, and provide some benches, with the idea that, hey, we can always use them in the parks later, once we have that taken care of.
Are you making a motion?
I am.
I'll second it to bring it to the floor for discussion purposes.
And I think I've actually I kind of gave my
Right.
reasoning for that.
Okay.
So can we
No,
discuss it?
discussion, go
I would
ahead,
ask that you
discussion.
look into that and report back at the next meeting. I have no idea what that would cost.
So I'll withdraw my motion, that's fine.
Yeah,
Next meeting will have some prices and styles.
Sure.
Matt, that's a great thought, Matt. Also, we all know that we applied for the grant. I worked hard on that with the soda. I think I applied for a grant for $700,000. Most likely, we are able to receive that money. And I spoke to them a couple of weeks ago. Looks favorable. I think, which is also including that money we're gonna get, they're gonna build the pull-out and makes a nice area also accessible for the handicap. Then again, some of the bus stops will have the shelter built, stuff like that. The benches include that, which one we'll talk with that. Jackie's working on this. She worked very hard to submit the application for that, for the grant money. I think when the grant money comes, what Matt proposing, we all put together, we develop a nice bus pull-out, bus stops area, which included, I think part of the plan was the bus stop also suggesting on the grant, they may pay for the installing the garbage can, also removing, they may work with the Rumpke, something, we all talked about that. Jeff also remove the trash from the bus stop. I think we'll wait, we should be hearing anytime in October, sometimes about the grant money. We utilize it very efficiently for the bus stop purpose. So make this a better place. I saw one, Cheviot Road, they built the pull-out right in the White Oak Shopping Center. It's beautiful, it's real nice. And also, it'll calm the traffic jam in the Colerain Avenue. So that'd be good, Matt.
Okay, so, yeah, so that's fine. I'll withdraw my motion. We'll look for that next week, next meeting. So again, that kind of leads into my back-to-school thing here. That's unfortunately, we're going back under circumstances that we, 3 weeks ago, probably didn't think we'd ever have to face again. So just keep in mind that I can't imagine being a 7-year-old and a parent of a 7-year-old having to face a mask or not mask or whatever. But keep that in mind too, so that we keep our kids safe. Trash is still an absolute focus. I know Mr. Mills spoke about the reason, and I was one who pushed for the contract because I want to throw everything I want to try every approach I can to taking care of this issue, and it's an issue that just seems to be, it just seems to be never ending. I hear at least once or twice a day from people who are out in the community and are looking at locations, especially by some of the drop boxes, and it's amazing. It's just what people feel that they're entitled to dump in a parking lot. And businesses who feel that they're entitled to just let it sit. It's how do you eat an elephant one piece at a time, honestly. It's because there are property laws in this country, and you just can't go up and, I guess as a private citizen, I could do better than I could as a government official. The park in the Fort Dunlop, I'm shocked at how many people I've seen there as I've driven by it a couple times over the last few days. It's great. There's tons of people, and that's fantastic, and I love it, and we'll just keep up the hard work on that, and I appreciate that. And I think that pretty much ends my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Dan, want to go now?
Sure, thanks, Raj. As the meeting's gone on and we've had different speakers, I've taken a couple notes. We talked about over on Chopin, and if you go back into the neighborhood, Chopin ends at a guardrail, And beyond, just east of that guardrail, you're in Springfield Township. There is a pretty large creek bed back there. And I know about it because one of the neighbors called, and yes, there is a car back there, and it's on its top. It's a 92 Honda. We've discussed it at the previous meeting. It is, when this neighbor asked me to come over and look at it, and it's probably 600 to 800 feet from where it was dumped in at. I think every time the water comes up, that thing moves. And you couldn't get back there with any sort of low ground clearance vehicle. I don't think you could get back there with a backhoe to drag it out because the elevation changes in the creek bed are pretty dramatic. I mean, there's 2 and 3 foot drop-offs, and I'm not sure how it's going to get out of there. The fact of the matter is, it is in Springfield Township. That waterway eventually winds its way over towards Winton Lake, and so I don't know if the Army Corps of Engineers has any ideas or Springfield Township. And personally, on my own time, I would love to go figure out how to get it out, but it's a big thing, and it's in somebody else's political jurisdiction, and I think Springfield Township is aware of it, which brings me to the sign that is located on the north side of Compton Road that discusses that an organization has bought that land and wants to put an autism camp back there. When you go back into the woods, and it's right where the Welcome to Colerain Township sign is on westbound Compton Road, and there is a bridge back there that is probably 80 years old, and it's an old concrete bridge, and I think before Compton Road was ever straight, it's part of the last remaining of Compton Road as a single-lane road. And maybe they did take that car across that bridge, but there's just a lot of honeysuckle and trees growing up around it. So yes, Keith, I am familiar with what you're talking about, and that car is back there, and it's in Springfield Township, and as far as doing work in waterways, which is what the creek is, that's probably an Army Corps of Engineers thing, and I personally would love to go get it out of there. I heard some other comments about, one of the speakers talked about, do we want to be Westchester? Do we want to be this? We want to be that? No. I love it here in Colerain. Been here my whole life. Places like Westchester and our good friends over in Green Township and all these other municipalities, some of those, especially Cincinnati, and we talked about this last week, they're so upside down in debt. Here in Colerain Township, I believe our financials are that our last remaining general obligation bonds will be paid off before New Year's Day, and we're something called pretty debt-free. And if you want to go live in one of those places where you're going to be upside down for the next 100 years because they can't get their big project, unexplainable project spending under control, that's fine. I'll stay right here in the land of little to no debt, which is what Colerain Township is. The bridge sign over 275. The former trustee was here at our last meeting and discussed that. There's a lot that goes into laser cutting out those letters. The finish on the letters is faded away. There's a similar pattern up at the bridge that goes over I-75 at Monroe. My idea was get those letters down, take them to put an automotive finish on them and put them back up. We are all three thinking different things about that, and you know, as time goes on, we'll arrive at a conclusion on it, but that's what's going on with it. As far as the trash, I think all three trustees and everybody here does what we can to mitigate trash problems. It's not limited to Colerain Township. My day job takes me all over the place, and you can go to the Pfeiffer Road on-ramp, trash there. Kellogg on-ramp down by Coney Island, there's a couch that's been there for at least a week and a half. And it's not just us, it's all over the place. People are really gonna have to change their hearts and quit throwing stuff everywhere. That's just the general unraveling of society, which has had a lot more effect on a lot of other places. I think we've been pretty lucky here in Colerain Township, actually, that we don't have the problems that so many other communities have. I don't, as those of you know, I'm not on social media, but I guess there was something going around last week about a clothing donation box over at Pippin and Hyannis at the Northbrook Shopping Center. People know what you can put in there and what you can't, and sadly there's people dropping off couches and tables and different things, and I guess those pictures show up on social media. I just hear about it. I don't go on there for a variety of reasons, but I did go over and look at it, and in fact there was a phone number on that box, and in fact I have a cell phone, so I called that phone number, spoke to a very nice lady on the phone, who was familiar with the location because she actually grew up in Northbrook, and she works for Paralyzed Veterans of America. I told her the problem. That was a scheduled pickup anyway, but they did manage to get the truck over there that afternoon and clean it up. So there's a couple ways to get stuff cleaned up, and that somebody commented earlier that they're tired of talking and they want to see action. Well, that's action when you call somebody and they come pick it up. So as far as our perception issues, once again, we're living in a society that's run pretty much by people on social media, and I know a lot of times they probably make good comments too, and so hopefully we'll get a little bit better perception of the community off of social media. And I think that might have been on my. I had a few more comments. Rebranding. I remember 20 years ago when Hamilton, Ohio decided to put a exclamation point after their name. For those who remember that, I don't know if you remember that or not, but there's a demographic up here that probably remembers that, right, Raj? And that never panned out. Merkel, do we know anything about this vendor that does cleanup? Yes, Merkel does a lot of work for ODOT, and they do work for other communities, and they will go down the road and pick up everything within the limitations that we give them, which does extend beyond the curb, to where a sidewalk might be, because that is part of the right-of-way. Litter pickup. Yes, we do have 2 open positions. When the board discussed this last year, we managed to get a pickup truck donated, and Donnie, maybe you're right. Maybe it does need to be more than $15 an hour. Well, how much? How much is it? Okay, we'll talk about it. Yeah, I do too, and I get out and do it. I think everybody in this room is concerned about it, and I think we all do it. The Muni Reg contract, somebody mentioned 8 years. I don't think it's been 8 years. Or has it?
The contract has not, but.
Is that something that you dealt with previous to my time being here?
2014, I think, is when.
Okay, so that's probably right then.
Yep.
And my last comment would be, we can't stop people from littering. You please change your hearts. Teach your kids not to do that. Quit throwing stuff all over the place. And like I said, it's not limited to Colerain. It's everywhere. And the best we can all do is just attack it and clean it up and try to get ahead of it. And I appreciate everybody's time. I really love the job here, and I think we're doing good work. So, thank you, Raj.
Thank you, Dan. I'll make it real brief. My trustees report. I think following up on the cleaning up, trash pickup, Colerain, our township going in a great direction. What's happening now, we got the business community, business chamber got connected. And we have what called team up with the business chamber, where people from all aspects of the business, we have meetings, a Zoom meeting. We talk about how the business, Jeff, we talk about they're gonna tag and everything. They're gonna tag the business. And this business community now, through the team up program, taking a large initiative to clean up the businesses. It's something that never happened before. And we got an adopt a block program. And also it gets residents got involved in this. This is now is kind of combining effect going on now. I know we may not see the immediate results right away, but it's happening now. The business community, the residents, the neighborhoods, they're all combining together. They're making effort. The people saying. Then we also heard that the old Ford dealership, the empty, and the people are dumping way in the back. Then I called the Toyota. I want to talk to the owner of the Toyota. I want to address this problem. And with the general manager tried to set up a meeting with these the people who want the old Ford dealership building. Now it's vacant. It's any place is vacant. It's like a dumping ground. You invite these evil elements to come and dump. The people dumping, they got no pride in our township. They just dump it. These are the people destroy the image of our great township. So I'm going to meet with them. I'm going to resolve how they're going to do this. me and Jeff Mills, we talked about that too. Also, the township made the initiative also earlier. Now I'm gonna go aggressively after them. So what's going on? Why they're not taking care of it? And I also plan to meet with the ODOT. Sometimes trying to get an appointment. Also already we exchanged an email. I'm gonna go up to the Lebanon, talk to them. The Colerain also, they should be part of that. Colerain is a part of ODOT. Actually, not a part. They own the ODOT. But I have a good relationship with them. The meeting will come up. Also, I'm going to ask them the money we're spending for this, see how ODOT can contribute their share. Like again, you said the contract, when the argument comes on that contract, then I'll discuss more. Also, I get the email from Commissioner Driehaus. This is very interesting. The federal eviction moratorium expired this week. The Hamilton County has got millions of dollars in the fund available, the millions of dollars available. People can apply for that. And mostly there's a help links. You can call me. My number is 497-4306. I'm going to put this in a website, the links. The people, help them pay the rent and utility assistance. Also the 513 relief bus. I don't know what's 513 relief bus.
I think that's the marketing behind all of their social services at the county.
Yeah,
It's 501
yeah.
relief. Yeah.
And then other relief resources. This would be a great thing that our residents were struggling because of this COVID pandemic and the affected loss of jobs. A lot of things are happening now. Now it's getting worse now. We are on the red alert now. So I got the link. You can call me. I can connect with the commissioner's office also. We try to put this link in our website so they can look into it. So this will be a great news for the people who are struggling financially to pay the rent and stuff. So that's my short report, trustee reports. And also I attend the leadership retreat, saw them, all our team, the leaders, team members joined together, developing a strategic planning. They talk each other. That's one thing. They're in a very different environment. They're more brainstorming. These guys are working very hard for our township. They all look forward how we can make Colerain Township one place higher. You know, it's not going to happen overnight, but we work hard together to move forward, and we're going to do it. It's going to happen. So that's my trustee reports.
Well, can I make one more comment while we're all three sitting here? Could you look into what it would look like if we changed that wage on those two positions?
Yes, it's we've talked about that internally also, and here's a question that it merits raising. If we raise the litter pickup part-time position to $20 an hour, we will be paying the person that picks up litter more than our part-time firefighter paramedics. And so that's a question. I mean, is that really fair? And I get it because we'll attract people. But I mean, you know, it's just it's a consideration.
But it's different work. The paramedic job's very different than being out.
I know.
Picking up litter.
I know, and
That's
I
a
would
market value labor. You know, that's what they charge.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah, I mean, do we consider, you know, raising? I mean, do we value the part-time firefighter paramedic the same as a person that picks up trash? And so, if so, then maybe we should consider raising that wage also. If not, then, you know, if the goal is just to fill the spot and attract folks to that.
Well, versus what we're paying Merkel.
Right.
So just a thought.
Yeah. No. Yeah, we can look into that and bring back a proposal but I think one major consideration is an equity consideration. You know, what signal does that send to our part-time firefighter paramedics that we're paying?
How many hours do the part-time firefighter paramedics get?
It changes. It's different because they're on different schedules, but, so it's different. We've got many part-time firefighters, they all have different sort of schedules.
And are they eligible for benefits in that?
Not usually,
Okay, yeah, because the other position isn't
right?
benefit eligible either.
That's right. We even considered, we have seasonals that we hire during the summertime, and we've talked about could we, transition seasonals into that role. But typically, folks are signing up to cut grass and maintain parks. That's what they're interested in doing. And so when we present that option to them, they would prefer to be a part of the park maintenance crew than to be picking up trash.
But walking along the road picking up trash is very difficult.
It is.
Physical work.
Yep, I know.
So,
Yep.
not that anything else isn't either, but that particular thing,
Yeah.
you're always looking over your shoulder. It's dangerous.
That's right.
Okay, well, just asking. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jeff. The next on the agenda is administration, the Public Service Development Administration. Go ahead.
Very good, thank you. First item of new business comes from our public safety departments, and it is a motion to authorize the township administrator to execute an agreement with Mobilecom. Chief, would you like to present this?
So the first item is a motion to authorize the township administrator to execute an agreement with Mobilecom for radio maintenance. And I recommend adoption of that motion.
I motion that we authorize the township administrator to execute an agreement with Mobilecom for radio maintenance.
I'll second that.
Any discussions?
Not from me.
Chief, that seems to be efficient way of doing.
Yes, we save in excess of $30,000 by having this maintenance contract a year.
Also, they do the free service, and that's a lot of cost.
Yeah, and that radio is a lifeline for our firefighters, so it's
Sure.
imperative that
The
that they
police
be in
officers and,
working condition, correct.
yeah, and they do it immediately. Any problem, they replace the radio, so no hassle, nothing.
Nope.
So that's good. Matt, any?
No? Nope.
Okay, Mr. Weckbach, roll call, please.
Mr. Roger Capol?
Aye?
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Okay. That's Jeff.
He stepped out for a second.
Okay.
He should be back momentarily.
Yep, so the next item on the agenda is also in the fire department. Chief Walls?
And that is a resolution authorizing the disposal of the surplus vehicle. And once again, I recommend adoption of that resolution.
Go ahead.
A motion that we approve a resolution, a motion that we consider a resolution authorizing the disposal of a surplus vehicle, and I would motion for approval of that.
I'll second that.
Any discussions?
Not from me.
Okay.
Chief, don't dispose it in the creek.
No.
Is there any other discussion?
All right, no further? Okay, Mr. Weckbach, roll call, please.
Mr. Roger Capol?
Aye?
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Denny will be presenting the next item.
Just have one item this evening. It's recommend adoption of a resolution to abate the following properties due to uncontrolled vegetation or refuse. 8371 Jackie's, 8462 Jackie's, 9854 Laurel Linda, 2696 Monette, 3029 Sovereign, and 10,032 Sturgeon.
I'll motion to accept a resolution ordering abatement on properties for uncontrolled vegetation and/or refuse.
I second it. Any discussions?
Just as a note, yes, I did drive out and look at the ones over on Jackie's. That last one is up against the state of Ohio has a sound wall there, and on the other side of the wall is Cross County Highway. And there's a distance between that sound wall and the end of Jackie's, and there's some pretty high weeds back there, but I think there's trash back there also. But I guess that homeowner's responsible for both at this point in time.
Yeah.
So I did go out and look at them. No
I'm
other
gonna
comments.
be that guy and say that the sturgeon one seems a little fishy.
I think Matt should be excused from the meeting. I have no other comments to top that, so.
I got to get back into rhythm here. I got high school students to entertain next week.
Start telling dad jokes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Jeff?
Mr. Rajagopal, would you like for a roll call?
Yes.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Yeah.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. The next item of new business is in administration. It will be delivered by Finance Director, Mr. Jeff McElravy.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. The resolution before you is to allow for us to complete the purchase of several items that the staff recommended and the board approved as part of the 2020 budget. This is a request that came from Public Services for the purchase of several capital items, including 3 dump trucks, a chipper body, and a flatbed for a swap loader. So the procurement for these items went through the normal process and ran into some delays due to the international supply chain. My understanding is that there are some parts that are on back order in Holland, and that these items will be coming our way as soon as they're able to complete the order. So, in the meantime, the Finance Department, in its regular course of activity, closes purchase orders from the current year and the prior year once the purchase that purchase order was created for has occurred. And the purchase orders for these items were closed in error. And once that purchase order closes, then the appropriation authority that came from this board back in 2020 lapses as well. So the item before you is to appropriate funds once again in the 2021 budget into Fund 2021 in order for us to be able to complete the purchase of these items. So the recommendation is adoption of the resolution to increase appropriations in Fund 2021 by $77,200.
I'll motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the adoption of supplemental appropriations as provided.
I will second it.
Any discussions?
Thank you for the explanation.
Okay. So that money is put back in 2020.
Correct. So the 2020 appropriation would close, and then those funds fall to fund balance, and that means that the money never went out the door. So what this will do is increase appropriations in 2021, so it all nets out to be consistent with the board's direction from the 2020 budget, so that we're able to pay it in 2021.
Sir, I have a kind of a hunkering feeling that you might be back in 2022 doing the same thing.
Geez, I sure hope not.
Because I understand that supply chain is still for automobiles and industrial vehicles and stuff is still tied up beyond knots. But thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McElravy. I will take the next 2 items. The next item is a motion authorizing the release of a request for proposals for branding services. At our last meeting in July, we had a special session wherein the board shared with staff their priorities, your priorities, for 2022 as we kick off our strategic planning and budgeting for 2022. One of the items that was brought up at that special meeting was branding and the importance of it, and that prompted this item. So it had been included in the 2021 budget and strategic plan. It is, so we have brought to you a request for proposals, and with your authorization, we'll release that, seek proposals, and bring them back to you for consideration.
I'll motion to authorize the release of requests for proposals for branding services.
I second. Discussions, please.
I will be interested in seeing it. We'll have to see how much it is and whether we're going to spend money on it at this time, but I'm fine looking at it, just as long as the vendors know that it might happen and it might not.
Yeah, that's correct, and we see that earlier in the citizens' address, Rich McVeigh brought some great points, and we got to do the thorough analysis, how it's going to benefit our township, how much money we're going to spend, and also make sure that we got long time ago we got citizens' concerns about the signs on the bridge. Colerain sign on the 275 bridge. That's also kind of gateway to our township coming in from the people. So this all should be included. We'll take a thorough, analysis on this branding thing, how it's going to be beneficial. It's also cost analysis, very important. Okay.
Mr. Mills, I had a couple questions so I had an opportunity to look for some other branding projects throughout the country, and this might be my kind of my greenness and when it comes to requests for proposals, but I have the first question I have is, and I support this idea, as you know. I mean, I talked about it at the last meeting. How do we know that a new brand is working? Do we have a strategy to? I mean, we heard Mr. Unger talk about Hamilton exclamation point. That didn't work, but something did work, because Hamilton, boy, they're in the news an awful lot now for a lot of things they get. So I'd like to come up. I don't know if that's something you, Mr. Weckback, or whatever would go through. How do we know what the new brand is working? And maybe that's something that is beyond kind of our scope, but is the scope of the people that would offer the proposal on a way for us to measure. Does that make sense?
Sure, I understand. So help me to understand what does winning mean to you? So what does success look like on the branding side? I guess that maybe that's something that we can look up.
I think, yeah.
Are there key performance indicators that can be tied to branding?
Right. And that's something that maybe they have more capacity to deal with. The other thing I noticed in the request for proposal, and again, this is kind of my greenness in it, it seems like the message should be a common message. Do we need to indicate that in the request for proposal, or is that something that's assumed?
Yes, I think that a brand identity, my understanding is a brand identity is something that is common distillation of all of the pieces and parts that make Colerain Township into sort of a brand identity document, which clearly states who we are, and then produces these sort of marks or logos or representations that communicate who we are to the world, and that's the mission.
And I think maybe Mr. McVeigh mentioned this too, but I completely agree. Why Colerain?
Right.
Why us versus whatever township? I think that our, and again, I don't know if that's something we put in the request for proposal. Is it assumed? But part of this branding effort is why come here versus Green, Westchester?
Differentiation.
Yeah.
And authenticity is the other thing that I heard Mr. McVeigh say that I think that one of the reasons why most branding efforts fail is that they're not authentic. They're aspirational, and they think hey, if we say we're going to be the best grass cutters in the world, and that's going to be our brand, and then we're not good grass cutters, well, then we've lied to everybody, and that's where projects fail. I think that branding needs to be authentic, and I think that you're absolutely right. I think you're right on point.
Yeah, and I think that's my next point, is that we need to make sure it connects. It hits with citizens, businesses, community groups, and it's not something that's kind of top down, that's kind of forced on them. I think that's. I don't, the 80% statistic from Forbes is scary, but I think a lot of those failures probably are not bottom up; they're top down. Sorry, I just going through my list of notes here, and that this branding has to be something that we could use for multiple target audiences.
Yes.
So it'd be something that we could use for families, that we could use for businesses, and then. I don't know if this would be part of the typical request for proposal on this, but how much does it cost to take this new brand and juxtapose it over the old? Because if it's one of those things, again, looking at that 80% figure, I imagine a high percentage of those 80% try to do it piecemeal. I really believe this is something you got to do at once, and everyone has to buy in. and how do we implement that? So those are the kind of maybe the big picture questions that I have, and also connecting that with economic development. So I don't know if that comes back as part of the proposal and a request for proposal, or if that's something that we need to specifically identify. But those are things I would be interested in this. I mean, we've got one shot at this, and it's got to be done. It's got to be done well, and it has to be done by somebody that takes into account the long history of Colerain, and it's a long history. Those are just my.
I see Matt's, he makes a valid point. I think, like I said, we develop a strategic goals. What 19 strategic goals plans. We have 20 strategic goals planning, 21, 22. So what's all means? Almost kind of, we can quantify. Okay, what we're doing is we can quantify how this program works, branding, what type of things we can measure it. Okay, is it draw the more business, draws the living standard of the of residents, overall the community aspect, good school system, how they draw the people from everywhere. Hey man, this is a great place to live. And there was a complete paradigm shift when you do the branding. So we can be able to quantify now. Right now, we don't know anything. I know we never had this. This is a historical town, historical township. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir.
I don't know if you do this, but I was on the steering committee for a meeting.
On Mike.
Oh, sorry. I hear myself. I don't know if you know this, but I was on the steering committee to create Fort Colerain. And the reason it was so successful is it started at the grassroots. We evaluated what the community needed and what it got. And I see a similar parallel to this branding. The same thing. We start out with a focus group and identified what possibilities we could go after in terms of a theme. And branding is the same way. You have an identity and you have a message. And as soon as you can put those two together, you have a brand. And that's what I found out in a lot of my professional contacts. But in terms of the branding, you can put a focus group together amongst the community from all sides of the community. Colerain is 50-some thousand people. They all have an idea. And if Mr. Miltz could start with focus groups, they don't cost anything. Maybe you put Cokes out on the table or some snacks, but at least at the grassroots, you got some commonality with who you are and what you are. Because that's a typical starting point with all branding companies. I worked with some of the biggest in Cincinnati and in the world. So I know what I'm talking about. And I'm just suggesting it's not complicated if you just think it in simple terms and just start with the focus groups, and then you work your way through who Colerain is and what Colerain is and what it can do for everyone. And whether these branding programs cost $100,000, $50,000, it can be a very expensive proposition, and you may not like the outcome. So that's my only suggestion, to be efficient about how you want to put this proposal out there. I think it's a good idea to get some feedback from a professional group, but I think before you get there, you need to start with the grassroots, unless that's already been done. I apologize for not having that information, but I know with Megaland and it became Fort Colerain, that was an evolution of community needs, and we identified what it was, and then you, as a group, the board and Jackie and others, put together the funding with Ms. Adams, and it happened. So the same thing will happen with branding if you just start out with the basics and then work your way up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Good. Can I make it, we got other mistake, I'll make it brief, very brief.
When a corporation brands something, they've got a product, or a line of products, or a vision. You need to realize Colerain Township is not united. You have several different groups in Colerain Township. I live on the west side, rural. People on the west side and the northern parts that are rural do not agree with a lot of stuff going on the east side. We are different. Some of the things that the folks in Northbrook and Groesbeck may want, we don't want. And the problem with the brand is, you put that in as a brand, I'm not gonna buy in. And unfortunately, a large part of the tax base, the people that pay for this stuff, come from the areas I live in. And you need to keep that in mind. I know our numbers aren't large as far as voting, and that's the reason why we get voted out with schools and so forth. But you get a brand, what is the brand? Is it the Northbrook brand, the Groesbeck brand? I mean, what is it? But what I've seen going on with these focus groups that we've had over the last couple of years I've participated in are not, we're not on the same page.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, let's move on to the next on the agenda.
Well, I think
The vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Mr. Roger Capal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Very good. The next item on the agenda, gentlemen, is a resolution authorizing participation in the One Ohio settlement, and that'll be presented by our Assistant Law Director, Scott Solomon.
Over the last couple weeks, as everyone's well aware of the opioid crisis, in dealing with the pharmaceutical supply chain manufacturers and producers, there has been a proposed settlement. One Ohio subdivision has created a memorandum of understanding with 3 of the larger companies. Johnson & Johnson is not included. If Ohio would settle, it's either going to be the first or the second to settle. Both the Ohio Attorney General and the Governor are recommending the settlement. Time is of the essence, and so they need to know yea or nay. If we're in favor of this, it needs to be produced. The resolution needs to be adopted as an emergency, obviously, and provided to the entities by the 13th, this Friday, no later than the 13th. The proposed settlement amount is, and that really is only with respect to municipalities and townships and counties that are over 10,000 people. That's what, they have to get a certain percentage in order to make the settlement move forward. The proposed settlement is approximately $804 million divided among all municipalities, townships, and counties, including those under 10,000 in population, paid over 18 years according to a complicated formula. The guaranteed settlement amount is 55% of the gross settlement amount. If benchmarks are met, it can reach 100% of the settlement amount. And as far as Colerain goes, I think 70% of the benchmarks would result in a payment of $197,139.32. 100% of the benchmarks would result in $281,627.60. I would recommend, along with the Attorney General and the Governor, and also the Ohio Municipal League and Township League associations are also recommending acceptance of this, that Colerain follow suit and approve the MOU, knowing also that there's these numbers, the material terms are set forth in the MOU, and these are not set in stone. These might be subject to change on some level, but that being said, in order to move forward with respect to the settlement, I recommend that the township and the board accept and approve moving forward with the MOU, settling the Ohio opioid settlement agreement.
Okay,
I motion that we motion for the resolution authorizing participation in the One Ohio settlement.
I'll second that.
Any discussions?
Sure. I was listening to your math a little bit, and the settlement's about $804 million if all the benchmarks are met. And a place the size, an entity the size of Colerain Township would get, if the benchmarks are met, around $200,000, which to me, I think that the school districts are not part of this. And I know there's 632 school districts. I'm not sure how many townships there are, but 200,000 sounds kind of low out of 804 million. I imagine the legal fees on this are probably eating up half of that 800 million.
There's also, if I remember correctly, there are a series of regional or state level pots that we will be able to apply to for specific projects.
So that the 200,000 would be directly to us, and then there'd be
And then I
other
think it's
money.
like 25 million to a regional foundation, and that varies obviously from the 70% of the benchmarks to the 100% as well.
And it's just however, whatever our lobbying ability is how much we would get out of that.
Correct.
So the legal fees goes to your firm or the people?
No.
No, we're not seeing it. There were only a handful of entities that actually participate in, and I don't know how that is all being divvied up.
I went to that meeting when they had Attorney General, the governor's office in downtown. I went to the meeting. Like you said, the formula is very complicated. They're still not figuring out yet. Attorney General, they're working on it, and I don't know. But we had to give the participation first.
In order for this to
In
move
order to
forward, it's
get-
going to be a certain percentage of all municipalities, townships, and counties over 10,000 residents.
Right.
And so,
So
assuming this would pass today, I would take that signed resolution and then forward that to the proper, and probably, that would also provide me authority to go ahead and execute the participation agreement. I'd forward those materials to an address that I have, an email address that I have, and we'd go from there.
Fine with it.
Mr. Solomon, a quick question. Did I hear you say that it's over an 18-year period?
Yes, it is over an 18-year period, and that's my understanding.
So essentially, we'd be, best case scenario, looking at a little bit over 11 grand a year, or do they front load the governments?
I don't know how they're going to go ahead and determine the benchmarks. I think there's probably going to be a percentage that's given, and then depending on how benchmarks are made, and I don't know necessarily how exactly that's all going to spell out. I have not read, it's an extensive document, and I've read just the highlights of it, and given the fact that it's an MOU, there's the details that I think are still trying to be
It
finalized.
probably depends how many people participate.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my warning bell and concern on this is that the big pockets aren't there. Johnson & Johnson is the biggest actor in this, with McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen Corporation. Ohio is what, the second state to pursue this legal in litigation?
I don't know.
no, one of the states. It's one of the states, but it's one of the largest
I think
states.
there's a number of states out
New
there.
York,
We would
New
be the
York.
first or the second to actually reach
Right.
a resolution.
So my overall point is, if this is an 18-year payout, I'm not going to hold my breath past year 5 or 6. Some of these companies, I think, will just reorganize.
It depends. I know with the Purdue Pharma, the other MD.
Well, they went to jail, so theirs is a little bit different, yeah.
They did, but then they created a new company with respect. So the company was gone, but then they took some of the assets and they moved it into another company being overseen by people outside their company. So there's all types of ways that these corporations kind of shift and change.
Right, and if you take the future value of $11,000 18 years from now, I mean, that's,
But 200,000 is more than we have now, so.
I get that part, but, yeah, I get that part, but I just, I don't know.
I'm not interested in suing them individually, so I'd be more inclined to participate in this settlement.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, any further questions, discussions?
Not for
Go ahead,
me.
Mr. Weckbach, roll call.
And just as a point of clarification, I've got all the resolutions from this evening over here for signature, but this is probably the most important one to have you all sign before you leave tonight, should it be adopted. And with that, I'll do roll. Mr. Roger Kapal?
Aye?
Mr. Unger?
You don't want us getting out the door without signing it. Aye.
Exactly.
And Mr. Waller?
I'm going to vote no.
Okay.
So, thank you, Mr. Solomon. The next item on the agenda is consent, and we have two items on the consent agenda. The first one is a new hire in the Department of Fire and EMS. It's a fleet mechanic co-op position. So the position was posted. We received applications and conducted interviews. We made a conditional offer of employment to Andrew Walton. The wage for the job is $12.36 per hour, and it's not to exceed 30 hours per week. If the board approves this tonight, Andrew will be eligible to begin work August 22nd, 2021. And the other item on the agenda is the Merkel contract, which we've spent a great deal of time talking about. So the recommendation is to approve all items on the consent agenda.
I motion that we approve the items on the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Any further discussions?
I think we've thoroughly discussed the Merkel item.
Okay. Mr. Beckbaugh, roll call, please.
Mr. Roger Capal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, board. We've accomplished a lot tonight.
Okay, we don't need a executive sessions.
Wait, Mr. Weckback has to give a fiscal officer report.
Fiscal office report.
Meeting went smooth. Thank you.
All right. If any no further executive sessions, then I call for the adjournment. Mr. Beckbach.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Mr. Roger Capal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
It is 9:19 p.m.
It's 9:19 p.m. The Board of Trustee meeting is adjourned.